Professionally, I respected Triple H and his work. I enjoyed working with him. He was always willing to do anything, try new things in the ring. But he was protected, and I resented that. He was part of the clique, and I viewed him in a lot of ways as an ass kisser because he was part of that clique. And again, this is another thing. I've come to terms with the fact that looking in hindsight now, looking back at the way I acted, and regardless of what he did or who he was friends with, he handled his business perfectly. I often talk to people nowadays that are new in the business coming up, and they ask for advice. And one of the pieces of advice I always give people is, if you get a chance and you get up to a major company, look around, figure out who's got the power, and be buddies with them, because that is a fact. That is the way it works. If you've got powerful friends, you'll get great opportunities. He aligned himself with those guys because he saw, when he first came in, Triple H rode with a lot of guys too. I saw him. He rode with like Cactus Jack. He rode with Man Mountain Rock. He rode with these guys he knew from WCW. But eventually he smartened up and realized, okay, he needs to hang with the clique. And Scott Hall took a liking to him. I remember sitting at TV watching the monitor with Scott Hall watching Triple H wrestle somebody. And Scott Hall saying, I think I'm going to make him a project of mine. That was Scott's words, exactly. And then after then, all of a sudden he was riding with those guys, and, he was getting better pushes. And he was protected, like I said. It's interesting. People always talk about me being the first loss Triple H had. He lost by DQ, and it was the goofy finish because at the time, I guess the president or the commissioner was Gorilla Monsoon, so we were wrestling in this free-for-all match. I guess it was before the SummerSlam or Royal Rumble. It was before the Rumble pay-per-view was coming because it determined who went in first and who went in 30th. We wrestled this free-for-all match, and he hit me with brass knucks, and he pinned me. And Gorilla came out and disqualified him. So I won the match. So he had to go in first, and I had to go out 30th.
Yep.
But I went out 30th and he got eliminated within a few minutes, whereas he went out first and he lasted quite a while, which made him stronger, and that was actually a better story for him. But yeah, the only way I beat him was by count out. There were times where I pinned him when we were in the feud and we were working a lot of house shows together because we were trying different things and they would put me over sometimes. But I knew on pay-per-view I wasn't going to beat him. I was not stupid. I knew how it worked. And I remember sitting in a limousine one time with Shawn Michaels before our pay-per-view, before I had the pay-per-view match with Triple H, because I was just kind of talking about some of my concerns. And it was interesting the way Shawn was kind of listening to me. But I looked at Shawn right in the eyes and I said, listen, Shawn, I'm not stupid. I know I'm not going over on Hunter. And he just kind of looked at me and goes, well, yeah, you're right. And I said, but we can do it in such a way where I don't get killed, And then, of course, they came up with that stupid fuck finish where he hit me with the lid and all that stuff. And it just didn't seem like we were going anywhere else with it. And I got really frustrated. But I wasn't, I knew how it worked for the most part. I just didn't conduct myself very well after that point. But, yeah, my breaking his winning streak was by disqualification.
Yes, that is true. And then not only does he kind of keep beating you in the feud, he cuts your hair, then you lose again at In Your House 6 pay-per-view. It definitely was going in his favor, so to speak.
That was a funny story. I remember, I was having meetings with Vince as we were working up to it, and I just kept saying, they said, we're going to put you in this feud and whatever, and I was getting into really good physical shape, and Vince always appreciated that. I just remember sitting there, and I said, I would kind of like to get away from being the happy-go-lucky hillbilly Jim garbage man character. I'd like to turn heel, and I'd like to change my appearance. And immediately, we were sitting there, and it was me, it was Vince, I think Jerry Briscoe was there, and I know Jim Ross was there. And Jim Ross chimed in, and this is before I knew Jim Ross was taking over talent relations. He hadn't taken it over yet, but he was getting ready to. But he chimed in, and he goes, well, why don't we do this? He said, why don't we set up an angle where Triple H cuts your hair, and we can turn you heel after all this is said and done, and we turn you heel, and you got your new appearance, but we can use it to heat up the angle. And I looked right at Vince, and I said, Vince, I'm willing to do this as long as I get some kind of revenge. And I said, I know I'm not going to cut his hair, but as long as you give me some revenge that makes me look strong in the end so I can move on. And Vince said, yes, absolutely. So this is one of the instances where I felt like he kind of went back on a promise. But he said, yes, absolutely. And that was my expectation. And then, again, we got to the pay-per-view, and the night before, one of the agents calls me and goes, oh, he's going to hit you in the face with the lid and pin you. I went, well, you know, and then nothing. And then they put him with Mark Marrow. Well, then he lost to the Ultimate Warrior in 12 seconds or whatever it was. And then they put him with Mark Marrow, so I knew I was done.